Hey everybody, how are you tonight? Dr. Stephanie Stroud with Cornerstone's Pet Tip of the Week. Today we are in part 4 of the fall festivities, dangers, fun, whatnot. So what are we talking about tonight? Well, tonight we're talking about one of the things that people love to do, and sometimes they love to take their dogs along with them, and that is going on corn mazes. Now, I don't know about you. Maybe you guys are into the scary corn mazes. Not so much. I'm a bit of a baby, bit of a pansy. Don't like to be scared, so I stick with the family-friendly, non-scary corn mazes. But what we want to talk about is there potentially some danger with corn mazes for our dogs, okay? The big concern I have with dogs going in corn mazes is if they were to eat the corn, okay? And so while corn itself, the kernels aren't necessarily toxic to dogs, in fact, corn is a wonderful, nutritious grain that is put in many dog foods. In the right amount, it can actually be very nutritious. So you hear all this thing about grain-free diets. Unless your dog has been tested, specifically been shown to be allergic to grain, specifically corn, we do not recommend grain-free diets anymore because we are seeing dilated cardiomyopathy, a heart disease that is being associated with that. So that is for a whole different topic for another day, but just FYI, corn is not bad, okay? It is a very healthy grain for most of our canine and feline patients, okay? But what is dangerous about corn? Is there anything dangerous about the corn? And so what is dangerous actually has to do with the corn cob. So is it toxic? Not so much, okay? The problem we have is that dogs love to chew on things. And while if your dog were to chew this corn cob into tiny little pieces, most of the problem they're not going to have any issues, okay? Now, again, if they have a bit of sensitivity to corn, such as with a food allergy, it very much could cause some vomiting and diarrhea and upset stomach, okay? However, the more concern we have is if it were to ingest large chunks of the corn cob or the entire corn cob whole. And you would be surprised at how many dogs will do that. So why is that a big deal? Can't they just digest it? Well, the answer is it depends on how big it is, which is why I'm worried about ingesting the entire corn cob or if they digest large pieces of it, because it can cause a serious thing called an intestinal obstruction. Yeah, that's as bad as it sounds. So basically, instead of passing from the stomach out through the back end, it causes a blockage where it can't get through the intestines. And so what happens is you end up with a lot of pain. Your dog may be straining to defecate, it may be vomiting, but it becomes very sick. And if it sits in that area where it's obstructing the intestine and long enough, part of the intestine can actually die, and your dog can become very ill, and they can die in turn. So it is a very serious emergency in the case of an intestinal obstruction. And that's why I worry about corn cobs with dogs, is because they love to eat things that we don't necessarily want them to eat, okay? Same thing can happen with toys, okay? So toys are just as dangerous and can cause an intestinal obstruction. And the problem with corn cobs is that the dogs will eat the corn, but they'll eat the corn cob as well, and they'll swallow it whole, okay? So while corn, again, is not necessarily toxic to dogs, the concern we have with going on these corn mazes and everything is if they were to ingest a corn cob that has been thrown off to the side or anything like that. Additionally, some of this corn is very dried in the corn mazes, and you can have all kinds of molds and yeast and other things growing on it that could potentially be toxic. Different funguses can be toxic to the dogs. And so those are things that we have to be really watchful for. So what can you do as far as trying to protect your dog? Let's say you want to take your dog with you on the corn maze. Well, make sure that they are on a leash, okay, first of all, and so that you have good control. And there's a lot of different leashes out there. I don't like the flexi leashes where they can just wander off 50 yards and kind of do what they want, because if your dog were to ingest a corn cob or something, there is no way that most of us can get over there in time to get it out of his mouth before they swallow it if they're 50 or even 10 feet away. And so I like the leashes that are 3 feet 3 feet long or less. And so you have really good control. There's not any chance of them getting something where you're not right there along with them. And so I recommend make sure your dog's on a 3-foot leash or less. 2, pay attention. Okay, it's so easy. That sounds really simple, but it's so easy to get distracted and trying to figure out where you are that you don't pay attention to what your dog's doing, okay? And so paying attention to what they're sniffing and they're eating. Again, mushrooms are one of the things we talked about a couple weeks ago that can be toxic. So, pay attention to what they're eating, what they're sniffing around, because we don't want them to ingest poison mushrooms. We don't want them to ingest moldy corn. Any of that can be very toxic to our pets, okay? The third thing is have your emergency plan ready to go. And what I mean by that is in the case that your dog ingests a corn cob and you can't get it out of their mouth fast enough, is have that card in your wallet or on you that has your emergency veterinarian's number on it so that you can get emergency help right away. They will be able to tell you whether you need to come in, whether you need to just monitor for certain clinical signs. They will go over those clinical signs to monitor for, and they're going to be able to help advise you on what you need to do. So, is it the end of the world if your dog swallows a corn cob? No. Can it be serious? Yes. Are the emergency veterinarians there to help you? Absolutely. That's what we're here for. So, those are my 3 tips. It's perfectly fine to take them with you to the corn mazes. Have fun with that. Be careful on those dogs that are a bit anxious. If you're going to a scary one, you may reconsider taking one of your anxious babies to that. Don't want to worsen any anxiety there. But otherwise, enjoy that fun fall festivity. So I will see you guys next week. We'll see you later.